Welcome to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. It's the show geared toward keeping you up to speed with the latest auto news, event coverage, and expert industry insight. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Avery and John Kraman.
We are so glad you've joined us for another On the Move. I'm Matt Avery, executive producer of The Transmission, and joining me is John Kraman, lead TV commentator for Mecum Auctions on NBCSN. John, we have such a great show today, and it all starts with our segment 2 guest. I had the chance to sit down for a special conversation with Scott Talon, director of Jeep for North America, and we talk all things Grand Wagoneer concept. It's a vehicle that you and I got to preview a couple weeks ago, and I was able to go a little bit deeper with Scott into that vehicle and even some hints at what we will see when it hits showroom. So a lot of good stuff is in store. Why don't you tell listeners who's on deck for segment 3 today?
Well, one of our compadres here, Mike Baker, he is the director of Mecum Auto Transport, and we've not had Mike on the show yet, so we want to bring him on and bring us all up to speed and up to date on what is happening in the Mecum transport world, a relatively new division of Mecum. So Mike's looking forward to joining us. That should be a lot of fun as well.
And it is time for another digital edition of the Mecum Magazine to hit the virtual newsstands.
Right.
John, I heard in your column this month, you were looking through rose-colored glasses.
That is exactly the title of my monthly column, Matt. So basically what I'm referencing and recalling is this unique year, as we're all aware of, and just how strong and vibrant the collector car market has been. So it's just a little bit of insight, some of my observations from being obviously an industry insider in the collector car world and the auction world, not only covering the last 3 auctions for Mecum on television on NBCSN, but seeing the success and the interest continue. So it was a lot of fun writing that one. It's just sort of a rambling summary of kind of what's happened over the summer and why. How about you? What did you choose to write on?
Well, in my Free Revs column, I am spotlighting the story of a 1966 Ford Mustang owned by a local collector here in the Midwest, Larry Norris. Larry bought the car because it rekindled some memories of some major life milestones that he was going through around the time of 1966, including a recent wedding, and then also his being stationed and deployed to Germany with the Army's 3rd Armored Division. And the thing that's really neat, John, is all these vintage photos that Larry supplied that go with the story that just make it really stand out. And then in addition to that, I also put together a pretty robust feature looking in depth at a very hot hauler from the 90s, the 1991 GMC Syclone. Such an impressive vehicle still today with its performance capabilities. I delve deep into how it got created and then also some of the other stories associated with the truck that are lesser known, including the batch that went to Saudi Arabia, the pace truck that was created for the Indy 500, and then also the Marlboro Edition. So all this and more can be found in the latest Mecum Magazine, available now. John, turning our attention to auctions, what do we have coming up?
Well, obviously Dallas, right in our gun sights, Matt. Really looking forward to heading down to Dallas. Fitting into that formula that Mecum has put together for the remainder of the collector car auctions for the schedule of a 3-day auction with a 1,000 car target. Following Dallas in mid-October is going to be the Indy Fall Special, late October. Las Vegas really starting to rev up strong. I would encourage anybody interested in consigning for Las Vegas, do not hesitate. It is filling up fast. That'll be mid-November. And then the end of November, back to Kansas City, one of our favorite venues, and then finishing out the year with Houston in early December. And keep in mind, we're already starting to talk about and plan pretty aggressively the world's largest collector car auction, Kissimmee 2021. That's January 7th through the 17th, 3,500 cars, 10 days, and the world's largest motorcycle auction as well. That's in Las Vegas the end of January. So cars, motorcycles, doesn't matter. Get on board. Mecum is going at full strength.
Well, as you mentioned, Dallas is right around the corner, but that hasn't stopped some high-profile consignments from coming in, including the 3rd C8 Corvette that will be at that auction.
Yeah, keep in mind the last couple of auctions, we've had one, and they've brought about $20,000, $30,000 over window sticker. And I think the success and the increased availability of the C8 Corvette now, with about 13,000 or so have been manufactured manufactured so far for the 2020 model year. Really, really cool. The fact that we're going to have 3 of the new C8s, all in different colors, all in different configurations. We'll see if that trend of $20,000 to $30,000 over a window sticker continues to be sort of the norm in the price range for those. Some other heavy hitters, Matt, that we're calling main attractions. What else did you see?
Well, there's probably a model that a lot of people haven't heard of because it's so exotic. It is a 2017 Pagani Huayra Roadster, John. Really wild cars. What do you make of them?
Well, only 100 of these Roadster models were built, Matt. It is an incredible car. It is a super ultra exotic Mercedes-Benz AMG power. It's a turbocharged V12, putting out about 750 horsepower. It's a light car, a lot of carbon fiber, a lot of aluminum, about 2,800-pound car. It'll do well over 210 miles per hour. And they were expensive new, somewhere certainly north of $2 million. Discussion with Frank Mecum about this car yesterday specifically is he's expecting it to bring as much as $2.5 million. Wow. So that's going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye on that one.
Another one to be watching is lot number S109.1. It's a 1965 Shelby GT350 Fastback. John, this has been a year for Shelbys. We've had record-breaking success with some of those in the past. Where do you think this one's going to fall in terms of value?
Yeah, this is a multiple six-figure car all day long, Matt. 521 were built, and the legacy of the magic of the Shelby Mustang started in 1965 with the original GT350. This one has been beautifully restored. It is ironclad documented. So very, very worthy of that main attraction title.
Bringing the Shelby conversation up to modern day, Ford announced that they are going to be discontinuing the 350 and 350R models.
Yeah, and we've predicted it. We've talked about it several times on the show that it was our feeling that with the attention now on the GT500 and with the announcement of the 2021 Mach 1 sharing a lot of the Shelby sort of personality, that being a high-performance, normally aspirated, small-block powered performance car with the definite performance image of the Mach 1. Not surprised to see the GT350 and its companion, the GT350R, going away. An interesting tidbit is the original GT350 built 1965 through 1970. That's a 6-year production run. They did the exact same thing with this one. We saw it released in 2015. It goes away for the 2020 model year. Once again, 6 years in production. So when they came out in 2015 on the Mecum auction block, they were instant collectibles and still are today. My guess is if you have thought about one, contact your Ford dealer. I think getting a 2020, the last of this generation GT350, would be a really cool car to have, especially if you could bookend it with an original 65 GT350. Man, that's the best of both worlds.
It sure is. Now, keeping the theme on performance car news, Mercedes-AMG has shown off the 2021 GT Black Series. John, they are claiming that it has the most powerful AMG V8 of all time underneath the hood. It is a 4-liter bi-turbo V8 that delivers 730 horsepower. Much of the design comes from the current AMG GT3 race car. Quick specs on the setup: 0 to 62 miles per hour, 3.2 seconds, a top speed of 202 miles per hour. There is all kinds of aero enhancements done to the car, all kinds of carbon fiber. And in terms of price, John, there has been nothing posted yet, but rumors speculate this thing is going to be pushing into the $400,000 range.
Yeah, it's going to be a big bump, but as we've seen on the Mecum auction block, Matt, anytime you put that Black Series, which is the ultra premium version of the Mercedes-Benz performance cars, they will be very highly sought after. An interesting tidbit in that engine, that twin-turbo V8, you mentioned bi-turbo is what Mercedes-Benz calls it. It has been modified to accommodate the flat plane crankshaft, which is something that the very exotic cars have used, most notably Ferrari. It provides a different and in some ways a superior power movement through the engine, but just as importantly, probably for enthusiasts, is it also gives a very unique exotic exhaust note. So they spent some time doing that. And you mentioned some pretty good acceleration runs. How about this one? 0 to 125 miles per hour at around 9 seconds. That is getting it on.
That is. And speaking of getting it on, John, there was a lot of action at Talladega this past weekend from the racing standpoint.
Yeah, normally we don't cover racing news, but in this particular case, I think we got to give a nod to to the incredible Talladega. It set a record with 13 cautions. Denny Hamlin eventually was found to be the winner after 3 periods of overtime. And I watched the whole race, and hats off to the NBC crew, which actually had to transition. The race went so long into overtime, they had to transition from NBC to NBCSN, and they did it seamlessly. They did a really good job of keeping us informed of what was happening and tap dancing during the long periods of inactivity while the NASCAR officials were getting the track cleaned up. So hats off to those guys. A heck of a race, and right in the middle now of the chase for the championships, the playoffs. The stakes are pretty high in the NASCAR world.
And changing to IndyCar, John, you had heard some technology developments related to the fuel that they were going to be using.
Yeah, and that's some big news actually out of the powertrain end of Indy. Rumors have been flying that they were going to switch over to a conventional engine with hybrid power, maybe putting out about 1,000 horsepower. But because of the pandemic, they pushed that back, and they've decided to stick 2 more years to both Honda and Chevy powertrains under this particular formula. They are limited to 12,000 RPMs, 134 cubic inches. That's 2.2 liters, but those engines can put out up to 700 incredible horsepower. And you mentioned the fuel. How about this? They all run on Speedway E85 fuel. Now, that's a mix between 85% ethanol and 15% gasoline. So kind of a clean, green way to race those Indy cars.
Mecum Auctions is proud to bring you On the Move with Matt Avery and John Kraman. For more on the world of collector cars, head over to mecum.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
One of the biggest automotive reveals of the fall was Jeep's Grand Wagoneer concept, which is being touted as the rebirth of a premium American icon. Joining me now is Scott Talon, Director of Jeep for North America, to talk about the model's development and what's in store for when it hits showrooms. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Matt, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Scott, fill us in on your background in the automotive industry, including how long you've been with the Jeep brand.
Sure, Matt. I've been in the car business now for 22 years. Seems like 22 months some days. And I've been on the Jeep brand since 2013. So, needless to say, I came into the Jeep brand at a pretty good time where, coming out of a tough economic period, we have seen significant growth since then. I'd like to think that it's all because of me joining the team, but there's a lot of really talented, sharp individuals that have, helped contribute to the success we've seen.
Turning our attention to Wagoneer, when did it become apparent that the model would be returning?
Yeah, that's a great question because I can tell you that this model and the reintroduction of this nameplate has been in the works for years now. And it's really taking longer than I think we all initially expected because, the Wagoneer really held a special place in the automotive landscape when it was in the market. It debuted in the early 60s as a 1963 model year. And even at that time, it was considered, by many as a premium SUV. And certainly as it exited the market in the early 90s, it was firmly established as a premium luxury SUV. At a time when, SUVs were just becoming popular, it was really the trendsetter. And it did it through, luxury appointments, refinement, and a lot of innovation that the competition didn't offer. And, the last generation, I think, was certainly the most premium, and it drew the most premium clientele to it. And, standard leather seats, air conditioning, AM/FM radio, leather seats. These were all premium features that were not expected in a base vehicle in the 80s. And so when we look at the modern interpretation of that, it's about taking that luxury and that premium experience to the next level. Obviously, we'll leverage technology and make that experience even easier for the driver, the passengers, and make sure they do it in comfort, style, convenience, in a way that only they can in a Grand Wagoneer.
Now, along those lines, Wagoneer is unique in that it's a vehicle that a lot of people have memories connected with. Scott, was that true for you? Do you have any personal connection to Wagoneers of the past?
Oh, absolutely. There's a number of them. And in my youth, my family, fortunately, we had a Wagoneer in the family. So, and I think we all had memories and experiences with the Wagoneer many, many years ago. And we all drew on those experiences. And I think we were our toughest own critics and every aspect of the design, the features, the content, the packaging. We really challenged ourselves to go above and beyond what we thought that was going to be acceptable in the marketplace. Again, the Wagoneer established itself and really separated itself as being innovative and premium and not like everything else that it was available. So we knew that was going to define where the Wagoneer fit this space too.
As you've alluded to, the model is steeped in history and heritage. We first saw it as a 1963 model, and it lasted several decades. Scott, did any of that legacy factor the current concept's design, and are there specific touches where we see that most clearly?
Yeah, I think they are. I think you have to look a little bit closer than maybe the initial look at the vehicle. But I think when we showed the concept for the very first time just a couple of weeks ago, there was certainly some conversation regarding the lack of wood on the side of the vehicle. That's probably the most noticeable styling cue that is different. But again, this is a modern interpretation of what that Wagoneer was. So rather than having the wood on the side of the concept that we saw, we've incorporated it in different ways. So, for example, if you look at the front end of the vehicle, obviously very premium, very stately, but unmistakable. It's a Jeep with the 7-slotted grille. But embedded in those twin beam LED headlamps, you'll notice that each of the beams are cradled in teak wood, just to make sure that we had that exterior wood accent, done very subtly. The roof rails, another example, you'll see the grab handles on the roof rails of the roof rack, also lined with teak wood. So while the wood is not an obvious aesthetic design cue, it has been incorporated to the new concept, but done in a much more modern way. The front end of the vehicle, again, it's the face of the vehicle. It's really what defines the presence, the stance, and the, kind of that stately look and feel of the Grand Wagoneer. It's got a forward cant to it. So just like the original Wagoneer that where it really leaned forward almost at the top of the grille, you'll get that same look and feel from my profile. So a lot of those very subtle cues from the original Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer made their way into the concept that we saw just the other day.
And I believe one of those other subtle touches is the 2-spoke steering wheel. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. And when we talk about the interior of the vehicle, it's as much about the aesthetics and how clean and crisp it is, but it's about the materials as well, too. So obviously extensive use of really nice materials, leathers, natural woods, raw aluminum, but, all those design cues, the steering wheel, you pointed out, it's a 2-spoke steering wheel. And this is something that was debated and deliberated over a number of months, just the steering wheel alone. And because we demanded that, one, it had to be authentic and true to the original Grand Wagoneer, but at the same time, it must meet the definition of who this modern premium customer is. So that was going to be a real decision point. Seems very simple. It's a steering wheel. It turns the vehicle. No, it does a lot more, and I think it represents a lot more in a change in a direction and where Wagoneer sits, where the rest of the Jeep brand vehicles sit.
Something you mentioned a moment ago is the very iconic 7-slot grille up front, readily calling this out as a Jeep. But beyond that, there's a distinct lack of any kind of Jeep branding on the vehicle. Scott, fill us in on that design decision.
Yeah, and it certainly was a decision. The return of the Wagoneer was, again, going to be something very unique and different for Jeep. If we look at the existing Jeep lineup today, broadly speaking, we cover all of the mainstream SUV segments in the marketplace. There are a couple of notable missing areas that we do not compete, and one being the large SUV segment and in the premium space. We have a number of customers that are buy very premium vehicles, but they move on from the Jeep brand because they're moving up either in size or to a more expensive vehicle. So we really, the vision ultimately is for Wagoneer to be essentially a portfolio of vehicles that fit a little bit more premium than the existing Jeep lineup that you see today.
Gotcha. Now, Scott, as it's been presented, there's a plan in the works for a tiered rollout of the model, meaning that there would be a Wagoneer offering and then a more premium Grand Wagoneer offering. Any thoughts or hints that you can give at this point about how those two would be differentiated?
Well, certainly we'll have a lot more details coming before the end of the year on both the production versions of the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. So more to come on those.
Okay. Now, Scott, what can we expect from a powertrain standpoint?
Well, we're looking at propulsion in a number of different ways. One of the other vehicles that we have recently debuted was our all-new Wrangler 4xe plug-in hybrid, the first electrified Jeep for the U.S. market. Capable of up to 25 miles of all-electric power. Very similar. Our Grand Wagoneer concept has a plug-in hybrid powertrain. So advanced powertrains will certainly be part of the future of the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer, but premium powertrains, performance is certainly, an expectation for a premium vehicle. And I think those expectations will be met.
You mentioned premium, and I feel like no clearer is that scene than inside the vehicle, where there's a whole host of fantastical features ranging from multiple screen displays to a variety of textures and materials to that massive glass roof. Scott, how did some of those touches come about?
Yeah, and again, it's about, I think, innovation is probably the core of it. And, let's talk about the technology piece first. You mentioned the screens, and you're right. The front row is laden with screens. In fact, there's 45 inches of screen space on just the front row alone. And obviously that's to allow the driving experience to be more comfortable, more relaxed, easier to navigate, more better information, and ultimately safer for the driver. But in addition to that, the passenger in the concept also has their own dedicated screen. So they will now to be able to stream video. So if they're watching a program or a movie inside their home and they leave the house to go out to dinner, leave wherever, they can hit pause inside, hit play when they get in the Wagoneer and keep watching the movie. At the same time, that passenger can also look up navigation, change directions, take that information and then swipe it over to the center stack to the driver to where he can see it. So we're taking technology, connecting the passengers in a way they've never been connected before, not to isolate them from each other, but to really make it a more engaging experience for them. And, secondly, the second row, there's 30 inches of passenger screens in the second row, so they can, again, take command, and they also have that first-class experience. You mentioned the glass roof, really a unique feature. It spans the full 3 rows, first row all the way to the third row, complete glass roof. Another one of those real hallmarks of the Jeep brand is that open air freedom. And you'll notice that any of the rows, first, second, or third row, you had a very spacious feel. There was a lot of light coming in. The greenhouse was broad and opening, but at the same time, we put the glass panel on the roof, and it helps with just really opening up the entire vehicle and giving it that spacious feeling. One of the unique touches we did with that glass is we have a map, if you will, of the city of Detroit imprinted on it as well. Just a nice little touch that our designers like to do.
Now, all those screens allow for something called chill mode. Scott, fill us in. How did that feature come about?
Yeah, that's one of those, it's an innovative feature. We have the technology embedded in the vehicle. You clearly have the screen space with 45 inches up front, 30 inches in the second row, where you can sync all the screens together to display graphics that are intended to just do exactly that, make you chill, make you relax. So maybe you wanted a crackling fireplace. So all the screens in the vehicle, the front, second row, all go in unison to just a nice warm fireplace scene. Or you could do the Aurora Borealis. So you wanted more of a starry night with the northern lights blazing through. All the screens can be displayed in unison, showing the same thing. And it creates an environment and an experience that is really like nothing else, or certainly nothing else you've experienced in an automobile.
Now, one of the things that Jeep has really become well known for is hiding little Easter eggs throughout their vehicle, little design touches that really excite owners and enthusiasts. Even though Grand Wagoneer is just a concept, did any of those make its way into the vehicle?
Yeah, there were. There are a number of them. Certainly can't give them all away, but you'll notice a lot of the nods to the original Wagoneer. Again, it absolutely was the inspiration. Maybe the not being retro styling to begin with, maybe threw people that it doesn't resemble the original one and didn't have the wood on it. But the essence of what the Wagoneer stood for in the marketplace was absolutely the inspiration. So you'll see a number of images, impressions, call outs, interior and exterior, that give a nod to the original Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer.
Speaking of those, final question for you, Scott. Wagoneer seems to be a very special nameplate for a lot of people. There's a lot of memories attached to them. Give us some insight from your perspective. What makes the model so unique and so well loved?
Well, I think it's that. I know me personally, it is. It's the memories. It's knowing, all the fun we had. It's really, and I think about a lot of our models in the lineup. It's about having fun. It's about exploring. It's about being adventurous. It's about doing and not just watching. And our clientele, they are absolutely doers. And many of them, they have premium hobbies and they're a premium consumer. And now we can offer them a vehicle that meets not only their lifestyle, but it meets their expectations from a transportation standpoint. And those luxury appointments, those innovative features, a vehicle that's essentially going to make their life easier and allow them to take adventures, whether it's with the family or off the beaten path. Go anywhere, do anywhere that, you can only do in a Jeep.
Well, Scott, it's a very exciting model, and thanks so much for being on the show and for sharing all this insight, and we can't wait to see these things out in showrooms.
Thanks for the time today, Matt.
Don't adjust that dial. On the Move, we'll be right back. Our program is proudly presented by Mecum Auctions, the world's largest collector car auctions. Now back to Matt and John.
Hey, Matt, joining us today is Mike Baker. He is the director of Mecum Auto Transport. Really glad to have you with us, Mike. Do us a favor, man. Take us right back to the beginning. How did all this get started?
So it goes back several years. Dana always had a vision of taking that extra step for the Mecum auction customers. He always wanted to provide them with that added service. So in November of 2015, he approached me and says, I've got this idea and I need you to try and put together a program that can assist our customers with getting their vehicles to and from our auctions via a Mecum employee. So I set out, it took about 17 months, went through a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, reaching out to transportation companies within the industry, having conversations. Eventually, I got in touch with a gentleman by the name of Dan McAllister of McAllister's Transportation Group. Dan and I had a good rapport from the very beginning. He understood what we were trying to accomplish, that we were trying to give a new service to the Mecum customers, and he was very receptive to what we were trying to accomplish. After several meetings, we were able to come to an agreement where we would brand 12 enclosed car haulers with the Mecum Auto Transport brand that would be operated under the McAllister Transportation Authority. And that started, our very first auction was April, the Houston of 2017, and we were able to roll into Houston basically unannounced with the new Mecum Auto Transport. And we had our very first 6 trucks showed up for that auction.
You mentioned that there are 12 trucks in the fleet today. Mike, can you give us an idea of some of the logistics and planning that goes into keeping those rigs out on the roads?
Well, there's quite a big team that we have. We have our dispatcher is out of New Jersey. He works with the drivers day to day. Our drivers are from all over the United States. So when we get drivers home, there's a good chance that there's going to be a driver close to a customer going close to our next auction, the next logistical place that we're at. We've got the staff here in the office in Walworth, Wisconsin. They're our customer service staff that answer the phones, that process the orders. Then we have that staff that's on site at the auctions as well, that are going to be able to assist the customers there on site at auctions.
What type of vehicles is Mecum Auto Transport capable of hauling?
Well, we can haul just about anything you throw at us.
Okay.
There's going to be some difficulties with height and some width. We do have enclosed carriers. They are hard-sided enclosed carriers. They've got the hydraulic lift gates. They're very new equipment. They have the the newest and latest technology attached to them. But being enclosed, we are restricted on some things that we are capable of hauling.
So if somebody has a vehicle that might be oversized or undersized, or we do a lot of motorcycles, do you have the capability to help those folks as well?
So when it comes to I like to call them the oddities, the stuff that we really don't work well with our equipment, as a Mecum employee, we're not just going to turn away a customer. We're going to do our best to assist you. We're going to find another carrier. We have lots of partners in this business. We don't like to make enemies, so we have people that we can call to assist that customer. If it's oversized, I've got a guy with a flatbed that we can move. If it's a motorcycle, we've got a specialty motorcycle company out of Milwaukee that we use. We have a lot of different partners in this industry where we're here and willing to help the customer get their vehicle moved.
Now, we've been talking about moving a vehicle to and from a Mecum auction, but does Mecum Auto transport field requests for transporting vehicles for other purposes?
Absolutely. The trucks are always on the road. The drivers are always moving. We are able to assist somebody with a relocation move if they're snowbirds heading south for the winter, or if they're even coming north for the summer. We're able to accommodate any type of move. Between our 12 branded trucks and McAllister's, they have 60 trucks of the exact same equipment. We're able to assist anybody in getting their vehicles moved.
Quality of service, very important in transporting automobiles, keeping in mind that we're talking about typically collector vehicles, specialty vehicles, vehicles of a high value, compared to cars that might go out on an open transport at a much lower cost. How critical is quality of service in making sure that a significant car gets hauled safely?
So I joke around with the drivers pretty often about this. We are in this business because we care for the cars. We love the cars. We like seeing the 69 Camaros. We like seeing your 70 Mustangs. We like the cars. The drivers, the staff, we're here for the cars. We know how to handle these. We know how to start them. We know not every single car is going to be the exact same way to start or handle or drive, but we understand them. And with that being said, we're here to care for your investment, your car. We understand that a lot of people, that this is your lifelong dream to own this car, and we want to care for it as if it was one of our own.
Mike, what are the steps that customers take in getting a vehicle transported?
Well, the simple way is when you're bringing it into an auction, and you first contact the Mecum office here in Wisconsin, and you talk to one of the consignment agents. The request for a position form, it has a box on it. You can check it and say, yes, please have someone from Mecum Auto Transport reach out to me for a quote to get the vehicle to the auction. It's also just as simple as asking that consignment person, could you please get me a quote? And the consignment guys here in the office are very good. They're very hands-on. They don't just get your information and pass the buck. They'll take it the next step, and they'll hold your hand from point A to point B. So getting your car to the auction is extremely easy when it comes to getting registered with Mecum Auto Transport.
Now, once a pickup has been scheduled, what are some things that owners can do in advance of the truck's arrival? Yeah,
so when you're getting your vehicle prepared for the auction, you're going to reach out to us. Typically, 4 to 6 weeks before that auction is when we get the majority of the bookings for inbound. The most important thing is don't wait to get your car ready for that auction. If you're waiting on a part, if you need to get detailed, if you need to do the last small details for prep, get that done sooner rather than later. Don't wait until 2 or 3 days before the start of that auction, because we could have a truck coming through your area and we're needing to pick it up now rather than later. So most importantly is get your car ready. Once you consign that car, have it ready to go. We understand that there's going to be delays in getting parts, and we understand that your family may have other needs that are going to delay you getting your car ready, but that's the most important thing, is have that car ready.
What is the best way for anybody interested either in learning more getting a quote or booking transportation, best way to get a hold of you guys?
You can visit the Mecum website at mecum.com, and there is a tab in the center of the website for auto transport. Click on that, and you can find out all about us. You can request a quote. You can send us an email. There's a phone number that we are able to be reached at. Just go to mecum.com and select that auto transport tab.
Something you mentioned earlier is the presence that Mecum Auto Transport has at all of the Mecum auctions, not just with the trucks outside, but also inside the venues, correct?
Yes, we have 2 desks at each auction. There's going to be one to the auctioneer's right on the block entrance of the auction. There will be another desk in by the office. You can visit us at either one of those desks. You can get a quote before you make your purchase. You can come back to us and you can sign up to get your car scheduled for shipping back, and we'll be able to process everything there at one of those 2 desks.
We've talked a lot about scheduling weeks in advance for transportation. What about this scenario? Someone comes to a Mecum auction, wasn't planning on buying anything, but they see something that they have to have. They make a purchase, and now they need transportation in a matter of days, not weeks. Is that something that your team handles?
Absolutely. So your typical auction, we are at a rented facility, whether it's a convention center, a state fairgrounds. We typically have to be off those grounds within 3 to 4 days. So that's when my job becomes very interesting in setting up the logistics and getting cars loaded and off of the property. We've got the trucks are all there on site. They're ready to load. As soon as that auction is over, we'll get the trucks loaded. We'll get the first rounds of the local deliveries done, and then those trucks will come back. Typically, within a standard 3-day auction, we'll have all the cars out of there by Wednesday afternoon, and most of the customers will have their cars before the next weekend.
Well, let me just say as a final thought, Mike, that the fact that you guys are doing such a great job is backed up by our customers. We get a tremendous amount of feedback, phone calls, emails, and direct contact from our consignors and our customers that are dealing with you guys and the way that you're handling things. It's been a huge success. You and your staff are to be commended for doing such a fantastic job, and we really appreciate you coming on and helping us, taking us sort of inside what goes on with Mecum Auto Transport. Thanks so much, man.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to Mecum Presents On the Move, brought to you by State Farm. For more information, visit mecum.com. And join us again next time as we take you inside the world of muscle and collector cars and more.